I've actually seen a lot of people making videos saying that Zimbabwe is the Canaan of today. If you're working in the diaspora, you need to leave the diaspora and come back to Zimbabwe. But today I want to tell you the other side of Zimbabwe that nobody has ever told you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to my YouTube channel. I am Chalesto. If this is the first time here, don't forget to subscribe. This is the other side of Zimbabwe that you need to know before coming back. Allow me to start with the issue of electricity or power cuts. Here in Zimbabwe, if you are planning to come back to Zimbabwe, if you don't have a house of your own and you are planning to rent a house in the high density, ladies and gentlemen, just expect to have electricity at least 2 times a week. If you were staying in a country where there were no power cuts, here in Zimbabwe, power cuts are a norm. So if you are coming back, make sure that you are ready to face this challenge. Here in Zimbabwe, if you are staying in the high density, you know that electricity only comes maybe on a Monday or on a Wednesday or on a Friday or even once in a week. So if you are someone who was used to electricity, you need to know this, because you fell into depression. But if you're someone who is planning to relocate and start staying in the low density areas, maybe we'll talk of Chisipiti, we'll talk of Borodale, yeah, in those areas power cuts are actually low. You can have electricity for almost three quarters of the week. You can have electricity. That's why most people here in Zimbabwe, if you watch videos, they are now specializing in having solar powered electricity, because you cannot trust the electricity of this country. Because if you trust this, you are going to have a very big challenge where you find yourself just staying no electricity or anything. So guys, if you have a house, there are some people that have already built their house in the high density, yeah, just know that electricity is going to be a challenge. Also, another serious issue, the issue of water here in our country. You don't need to depend on council water. You have seen people making videos drilling boreholes. It actually costs around $900 or $800 to just drill a simple borehole, not installing the pumps, the solars or anything else. Just drilling it costs around $900. So you need a budget of around $2,500 to install and to drill water system for your home. So if you are coming back from another country, maybe you're working in South Africa, you need to make sure that you have the capital to start drilling a borehole, because you cannot depend on council water. Council water, where I'm staying right now, is a high density and it only comes on a Tuesday. So just know that on a Tuesday is the only day that you can really get water from the council. And sometimes the water that comes from council is not that good. And actually people will start complaining that this water is not even safe. So you need to know that you need to start budgeting on drilling your own borehole, because council water only comes on a Wednesday, of which you would want to use the water for the flush toilets, you'll be wanting to use it for washing and so forth. Here in Zimbabwe, what actually works are links. If you're that person who stays in the diaspora, who has been staying alone, and you cannot form a team, you are going to find it very difficult for you. If you're that person who cannot form friendships with other people, maybe your neighbors or so forth, it's going to be very difficult for you. Here in Zimbabwe, we work with links. The person who has a social link is likely to benefit from the country compared to someone who is always staying alone. Let me talk about the other crucial point, the point of renting. If you are coming from the diaspora and you don't own your own house and you are thinking of renting, you need to plan. Because if you are coming from a diaspora and you are coming here, the rents that you have been even paying in your country are different from the rents that someone is going to pay when you are here in Zimbabwe. For a high density house, if you are staying in a high density house, I can say the minimum amount you can pay for rent for a house with electricity is around $75 to $80. That is the minimum amount that you can pay for rent for a house with electricity. But if you want to stay at a house in a high density where there is no electricity, I think $45 to $30 you can pay rent for that. But who wants to stay in an area where there is no electricity in this in this era? It's very impossible. So if you are planning to rent, you need to bring money for rents. After paying rents, you need to know that you need food and groceries. For here in Zimbabwe, for a 2 kg of sugar costs around $2.50. So you need to know that as an individual, if I stay alone, I use around $40 for groceries for a month. So if you are coming with your family, maybe a family of 3 or 4, you need at least 100 for groceries. then you need to send your children to school. That is another expense. So for rents in the high density is a minimum of $80. But if you want to stay in the low density, maybe you want to stay in Avondale, you need to stay in Newton Park, you need to stay in Borough and so forth, you need at least 200, because that is those are low density suburbs that you need to rent. But I don't advise someone to come and rent in low density suburbs. You just need to come and rent somewhere where the rents are actually cheaper, depending on your pocket of how much you have saved. So you need to have a proper amount. You have to have a good pocket that will sustain you for the whole period, because you realize that transport you pay. If you're staying in an area, let's say you'll be staying in Shitungwiza, it costs around 50 cents to come to town, and going back, that is $1 a day. So you need to know that you need to have a very good plan, a very good capital for everything. And here in Zimbabwe, you don't just stay. No job will find you while you are staying here in Zimbabwe, and jobs are actually very difficult to find. Employment, I don't want to lie to you, a lot of people have got degrees but they have nowhere to work. What needs now for you to do is that you open your mind. We value practical skills. If you are good at carpentry, if you are good at building, you can find a lot of contractors that are doing those jobs, and you can fit in. You here in Zimbabwe, we don't care about you having a master's, we don't care about you having a PhD. Here we make sure that you have your practical skills implemented. So if you are, especially actually the skill that is actually paying nowadays, the skill of those guys that do tubing, that is tubing the house for electricities, for solar, whatever, for solar uses. If you are good with that, if you're an electrical engineer and you are good with that, I'm telling you, you need to have that skill and you are good to go. That is another skill that is actually paying here in our country. A lot of things are actually changing. Long ago, employment was much easier, but this time employment is actually difficult. Let me talk another issue, the issue of medical insurance. Our public hospitals, generally, they don't have enough or adequate medications for everyone. Maybe you're staying in Australia and medication was available for you. But if you come here in Zimbabwe, you find that at a private hospital, that is where you are going to find adequate equipment or adequate medication for your health system, for your health, in fact. So one thing that I advise you to do is you need to have your medical insurance. Here in Zimbabwe, we have an PISMAS, we have got an 24 corporate, we have CIMAS and so forth, other medical insurance company. You need to have your own medical aid cards, so that when you feel sick, you go to a private hospital, to a private clinic or a private hospital, or you consult a private doctors. So we have a lot of doctors that are doing consultations, but you can also make use of them when you have a medical aid card. Because if you come from another country, you have been staying and you depend on public help or public help from the public hospital, life here in Zimbabwe is going to be very difficult for you. So you need to decide on that one. Lastly, let me talk about the transport costs. Actually, here in Zimbabwe, I feel like the transport costs are actually cheaper. If you are staying closer to the CBD or the town, it actually costs around 50 cents to come to town, and going back is also 50 cents. So the transport costs here in Zimbabwe, they are not that expensive. Currently, we are using what we call the currency called ZiG, Zimbabwean gold. That is the currency that is being used. So the 50 cents is around 20 ZiG. So for 20 ZiG, that is equivalent to 50 cents. That is what people are actually using for transport. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I've just said as insight of something that you need to know, the other side of Zimbabwe, so that when you come here, you won't be depressed, you won't be shocked. So just come here with your own capital. Come here with the idea of starting a business. Come here with something that is good and something that you can see that it will sustain you and your family. If you have loved my content, just support me by liking, by leaving a comment, by sharing to your fellow friends, so that they can learn from here. Stay tuned for more videos.